punching me.
Punching you where?
My face.
Where on your face? Point to it for us.
I don't remember, but everywhere on
You
my
don't
face.
remember where she was punching you in your face?
In my face.
I mean, this is why you killed her, right?
No.
Right?
No.
It's not?
No.
You didn't kill her because she was fighting you?
No, I killed her because she took the glass from the hookah and slashed me across my stomach.
We, the jury, find as follows as the defendant in this case. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree.
On Tuesday, October 15th, 2025, a Broward County courtroom erupted in emotion as a jury delivered their verdict in one of South Florida's most shocking murder cases. 31-year-old Sakiyna Thompson stood convicted of first-degree murder for brutally stabbing 23-year-old Kayla Hodgson dozens of times inside her own apartment. The victim's family wept tears of relief as justice was finally served more than 3 years after that horrific July morning. But this wasn't a random act of violence or a robbery gone wrong. This was something far more chilling. This was about jealousy, obsession, and a woman who traveled over 1,000 miles with one deadly purpose in mind. If you want to stay updated on cases like this and dive deep into Criminal Mind, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to Crime Lab Report, and click the bell icon so you never miss an update. Trust me, you'll want to follow how this story unfolds. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare really began, because understanding what happened requires us to look at the tangled web of relationships that led to this tragedy. Kayla Hodgson was living what seemed like an ordinary life in Tamarack, Florida. She was 23 years old, working as a waitress, and well-loved by everyone who knew her. Her former employer and friend, Swana Alphonse, would later describe her as just really sweet and the life of the party. Kayla always had kind words for people. She was that person who lit up a room when she walked in. Her family set up a GoFundMe after her death, describing her as an amazing daughter, a beloved big sister, niece, granddaughter, and cousin whose bond with her family was like no other. Everyone loved her tremendously, and she was a friend to all. This wasn't just another victim. This was someone's whole world. But Kayla's life intersected with someone else's in a way that would prove fatal. That someone was Sakiyna Thompson, a 28-year-old woman from New York who had her own connection to Kayla through a man they both had been involved with. Thompson's ex-boyfriend had moved on and started dating Kayla, and that reality was something Thompson simply couldn't accept. Think about that for a moment. How does jealousy transform from an emotion into an action? At what point does someone cross the line from hurt feelings to planning murder? In the months leading up to July 2022, things were escalated between these two women in ways that most people watching from the outside probably didn't even realize. Thompson and Hodgson have been exchanging tense messages on social media, the kind of back and forth that happens when two people are involved with the same man. But here's where it gets really telling. Kayla eventually had enough and did what a lot of us would do in that situation. She blocked Thompson on social media, just cut her off completely. And you know what? That simple act of blocking someone, something we do all the time without thinking twice, became the trigger that pushed Thompson over the edge. Prosecutors would later argue that Thompson became absolutely enraged after being blocked. She couldn't let it go. She couldn't accept that this younger woman had not only taken her ex-boyfriend, but had now shut her out completely. So what did she do? She started planning. And I need you to really understand this part, because it shows premeditation. Thompson didn't just snap one day in a moment of anger. No, she bought a plane ticket from New York to South Florida. She packed her bags. She made travel arrangements. She flew over 1,000 miles with what prosecutors believed was one clear intention: to kill Kayla Hodgson. Now let's talk about July 13th, 2022. It's a Wednesday morning in Tamarack, Florida, and most people are still asleep. The sun hasn't even come up yet. At around 4 in the morning, surveillance cameras at the Tamarack Village apartment complex captured footage of a woman arriving. She was wearing a hat and a COVID mask, clearly trying to conceal her identity. She wasn't just casually dressed. This was deliberate. And here's another calculated move. Thompson had used a fake Uber account to get to Hodgson's apartment. Why would someone need a fake account unless they were trying to hide their tracks? By 5 in the morning, Thompson was standing at Kayla's door at apartment 9300 Northwest 57th Street. Now, Thompson would later claim that she went there just to have a woman-to-woman conversation, to talk things out like adults. But think about this logically. Who shows up at someone's apartment at 5 in the morning for a friendly chat, especially someone who you blocked on social media because the communication had become too much? Something doesn't add up there, does it? What happened next inside that apartment was absolutely brutal. Kayla Hodgson was stabbed dozens of times. Not once or twice in a moment of panic, but dozens of times. The medical examiner would later document the sheer violence of the attack. This was rage. This was someone who wanted to make sure their victim didn't survive. When does confrontation become murder? What goes through someone's mind as they make that choice again and again with each strike? Thompson's version of events, which she would eventually tell in court, painted a completely different picture. She claimed that when she arrived at the apartment, Hodgson let her in willingly. They were supposed to talk, just two women discussing their shared romantic interest. But according to Thompson, things went south fast. She testified that Kayla struck her over the head with a hookah stem, and then things got even more violent. Thompson said Kayla took a piece of glass in the hookah and slashed her across the stomach. Now here's an important detail. Thompson was 2 months pregnant at the time, and she claimed that when she felt that glass cut her stomach, she panicked thinking about her unborn baby. She said she blacked out after that, and when she came to, she was standing in Kayla's blood, realizing she'd killed her. But let me ask you something. Does that story make sense to you? Because the prosecution had a lot of questions about it too. If someone attacks you and you defend yourself, what do you typically do next? You call 911, right? You stay at the scene. You explain what happened to police. You get medical attention for your injuries. But that's not what Sakiyna Thompson did. Instead, she admitted to doing something that raised all kinds of red flags. She started cleaning up the crime scene with Lysol wipes and paper towels. She gathered up her bloody clothes and threw them away. And then, in what has to be one of the most disturbing details of this case, she changed into Kayla's clothes. Think about that for a second. She put on her victim's outfit and walked out of that apartment. The surveillance footage told its own story. The cameras captured Thompson leaving the apartment complex, wearing completely different clothing than what she had on when she arrived around 4 in the morning. She took that same fake Uber account back to her hotel, packed up her things, and flew back to New York. She didn't call the police. She didn't tell anyone what happened. She just left Kayla's body there in that apartment and went back to her life in New York like nothing had happened. It wasn't until around 3 in the afternoon that day, July 13th, when someone entered Kayla's apartment and found her body. Can you imagine walking into that scene? Broward County Police responded and found 23-year-old Kayla Hodgson unresponsive, lying in her own blood, stabbed so many times that the brutality of it shocked even seasoned investigators. The crime scene told a story of violence and rage, not self-defense. The arrest affidavit would later describe Thompson as demonstrating a depraved mind without regard for human life by stabbing with a sharp object with premeditated intent to cause death. Now the investigation kicked into high gear. Detectives started piecing together what happened, and they had some strong leads to work with. First, there was that surveillance footage showing a mysterious woman in a hat and mask arriving and leaving in different clothes. Then they traced the fake Uber account. They looked into Kayla's life, her relationships, her recent communications, and pretty quickly, Sakiyna Thompson's name came up. The connection between the two women over the ex-boyfriend became clear. The social media messages and the blocking incident gave investigators a motive. They could see the pattern of escalation. On July 25th, 2022, just 12 days after the murder, authorities issued a warrant for Thompson's arrest. But she was back in New York, and they needed to coordinate with law enforcement there. On August 3rd, 2022, New York City police moved in and arrested 28-year-old Sakiyna Thompson at her home in the Springfield Gardens neighborhood in Queens. She was taken into custody without incident, and the extradition process began to bring her back to Florida to face justice. By August, a Broward County grand jury had indicted Thompson on one charge of first-degree murder, and she was extradited from New York to Broward County. She was held without bond at the North Broward Bureau Jail in Pompano Beach while she awaited trial. And here's where the legal system sometimes frustrates people because justice can move slowly. Thompson sat in that jail for over 3 years before her case finally went to trial in October 2025. During those 3 years, both sides prepared their cases. The prosecution gathered evidence, interviewed witnesses, analyzed forensics, and built their argument that this was premeditated murder driven by jealousy. The defense prepared Thompson's self-defense claim, arguing that she had been attacked first and was protecting herself and her unborn child. When the trial finally began in October 2025, the courtroom became the stage where these two narratives would battle it out. On Monday, October 14th, 2025, Sakiyna Thompson made the decision to take the stand in her own defense. This is always a risky move in a murder trial because it opens you up to cross-examination. But sometimes defendants feel they need to tell their story directly to the jury. Thompson sat in that witness chair and admitted that, yes, she killed Kayla Hodgson, but she maintained it was self-defense. She told the jury, "I killed her because she took the glass from the hookah and slashed me across the stomach." She described blacking out and not remembering the sequence of the attack. She said when she came to, she was walking in the blood and felt terrified that Kayla had been trying to hurt her baby. Under questioning, Thompson tried to explain her actions after the killing. She admitted to panicking, to cleaning parts of the scene, to throwing away her bloody clothes, and to changing into Kayla's outfit before leaving. She said she was too scared to call the police. She said fear drove every decision she made that morning. But here's what the prosecution wanted the jury to focus on. If you're truly defending yourself and you're truly the victim, why all the covering up? Why the fake Uber account? Why the disguise with a hat and mask? Why fly all the way from New York in the first place? The defense attorney, Rose Meritzel, argued passionately that this was a mutual fight that got out of hand. She pointed out that there was no evidence Thompson brought a weapon to the apartment. She emphasized that Kayla let Thompson into her home, suggesting there was no forced entry or immediate threat. Meritzel told the jury that when Thompson felt that glass cut her pregnant stomach, maternal instinct kicked in. She said Thompson thought, "Oh, God, she's coming for me and my baby." And that's when she grabbed the glass herself and everything went black. The defense argued this wasn't murder. This was a mother protecting her unborn child in a moment of terror. But Assistant State Prosecutor Tanya Johnson painted a very different picture for the jury. She methodically laid out the evidence of premeditation, the plane ticket purchased days before, the trip from New York to Florida with no other apparent purpose, the fake Uber account created specifically for this trip, the disguise with a hat, and COVID mask at 5 in the morning. The social media messages showing escalating anger. The rage Thompson felt after being blocked. Johnson told the jury, being attacked and brutally murdered in your own home, that's terrifying. She argued that Kayla was the one who was terrified that morning when Thompson showed up at her door before dawn. The prosecution emphasized the nature of the wounds. Dozens of stab wounds. That's not someone defending themselves in a brief scuffle. That's sustained, deliberate violence. They showed the jury graphic police body camera footage of the crime scene, and you could see the impact it had on people in that courtroom, the sheer amount of blood, the violence of what had happened to Kayla in her own home. This wasn't a fight between two people where things accidentally went too far. This was one person methodically ending another person's life. On Tuesday, October 15th, 2025, after hearing 4 hours of closing arguments and deliberating on all the evidence, the jury reached their verdict. When the judge read that verdict aloud, guilty of first-degree murder in the killing of Kayla Hodgson, the courtroom exploded with emotion. Kayla's family members embraced each other, crying tears they had held back for more than 3 years. One family member said through tears, "We're just so thankful that the jury saw the truth. Kayla did not deserve to die the way she did." And they were right. Nobody deserves that. Sakiyna Thompson now faces life in prison. Her sentencing date hasn't been set yet as of this recording, but with a first-degree murder conviction, the judge has very limited options. This case serves as a stark reminder of how dangerous jealousy can become when it's allowed to fester and grow. Social media played a role here too, didn't it? The blocking, the messages, the ability to watch someone else live their life with the person you can't let go of. It's a modern element in an age-old crime of passion. So let me leave you with some questions to think about. How much of this tragedy could have been prevented if Thompson had simply accepted that the relationship was over and moved on? At what point does online interaction cross from harmless to dangerous? And here's the bigger psychological question. What happens in someone's mind that allows them to justify traveling 1,000 miles to confront someone, to disguise themselves, to plan and execute violence, and then to flee and try to cover it up? Where does self-awareness go in those moments? Can someone really black out and not remember stabbing someone dozens of times? Or is that a convenient narrative to avoid responsibility? If this case got you thinking about the psychology behind crimes of jealousy and obsession, do me a favor. Hit that like button if you found this deep dive valuable. Subscribe to Crime Lab Report, because we're going to keep bringing you these detailed breakdowns of real cases that matter. Click that bell icon so you're notified the moment we post updates on this case or cover new ones. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Do you believe Thompson's self-defense claim had any merit, or do you think the jury got it right? I want to hear your perspective. Until next time, stay safe out there, and remember that justice might be slow, but it's worth the wait.